Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Everyone, welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. Today, I'm introducing you to a brand new guest, Tom Paladino. He's on a personal mission to make a difference in the world by providing people with the education and tools to restore optimal health and enhance the quality of their life. He uses scalar energy, also known as scalar light, that works with the quantum field, which is the consciousness of the universe, to activate the body's own innate healing ability. His technology works through a person's photograph and has the power to break down the molecular bonds of over 400,000 pathogens, bacteria, fungi, and viruses, even parasites, and so much more in the body. And we're gonna dive into that one for sure. He also has many different programs for anti-aging, hormones and nutrition, and a whole bunch of other ones. And Scalar Energy helps with balancing your chakras, removing toxins from the body and the field, deepening your spirituality, improving your cognitive function, and overall well-being. Scalar Energy also works for your pets and your animals, which is really super amazing. He started with his undergraduate years of researching scalar energy, and he developed, of course, like many of you, a deep admiration for the father of scalar energy, Nikola Tesla. He was also able to study the work of a man, Hieronymus, who continued research on scalar energy, which his major contributions were about unbinding the RNA and DNA bonds of microbes plaguing the agricultural industry, rendering them harmless. Tom, a lot said there. I'm so glad to have you on the show. This is going to be an interesting podcast. I know my audience is very much interested in scalar technology. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thank you for the invitation. And it was a rather eloquent opening on your part. So bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, scalar light technology is obviously so many people, when they're kind of really interested in energy and even the spiritual path, they come across Nikola Tesla at some point in their life. When did you come across Nikola Tesla?
Well, brace yourself. I was reading about him when I was 8 and 9 years of age. Now that was before the computer. So I had to go to the library and I found arcane books about Tesla. You know, they are out there. And I read about him and I said, this guy's a genius. Why don't we all practice free energy? That's what his driving force was later in his life. He understood that the stars, the sun, provided free energy, and he tapped into that free energy. We should have listened to him.
I think a lot of people did want to listen to him, but obviously the powers that be would have never been able to make the money they're making or control things the way they're controlling them. Yeah, so 8 or 9, that's very interesting. And for libraries to have those kinds of books, and you were just gravitated towards that, like,
Yes.
Were you just specifically in, I don't know, a section of the library, the book found you?
I was an avid reader. I'd love to read. And in that sense, I consider myself educated, at least in this specific field, this of emerging science of scalar energy. And nonetheless, I had to order some of his books through specialty bookstores. There were bookstores back in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
And that's how I began. When I read about his accomplishment, You see, the bottom line with me, as it should be with any researcher, is what can you achieve? What is your performance? Show me your report card. What can you do? Talk is cheap. Show me performance. And when I saw his performance, and he demonstrated free energy time and time again, and he demonstrated, well, he has over 200, 300 patents to his name. So Tesla proved himself, and that's what I like. And I don't think anybody can hold a candle to him and to his performance.
Yes.
No,
I would agree with you. And
they
so
cannot.
at 8 or 9, did you kind of get this sense that you were going to follow this throughout life, or
Yes.
were you planning on like so you
Yes.
knew? So you've been on mission since 8 or 9, basically.
Yeah, I'm 63 years of age, so it's been a 50-year mission. Yes. Now
you're 63?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Mr. Paladino, you are doing very well.
Thank you. And I attribute that to Scalar, frankly. Because it has enhanced my well-being. I believe I have prolonged my life. I believe scalar energy, which is the life force energy, and the fact that I treat myself with life force instruments 24 hours a day, I've slowed down the aging process. I know I have.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who's listening on iTunes, you may want to head over to Spotify or YouTube to look for yourself, but you definitely do not look in your 60s. I would even say you are shying out of your 50s into your 40s. It's interesting because I've done some research into the whole anti-aging phenomenon of like our body and how things work. And I would say meditation, which I believe is in many ways, like this is what I'd like to get into, is how do you see what is the kind of human equivalent of scalar energy? Like how do we create our own energy, which can absolutely, like when you talk about how scalar energy can break down the bonds of over 400,000 different pathogens that you're aware of. I myself have healed from what I believe was at the very minimum pre-cancer cervical cancer within under a year, and all the
good for you.
The black spots, everything gone. And so how would you equate the human technology to scalar light technology?
Okay. Well, just to let your audience know, everybody is a scalar energy expert. And every nanosecond of your life, you work with scalar energy and you emit scalar energy. So what am I getting at? Scalar energy is free energy. It's the energy of the sun, the stars. And sunlight and starlight flood the universe. We are bathed in sunlight and starlight 24 hours a day. So the human mind captures that scalar energy. It's responsible for thought, cognitive thought. And the human heart captures that scalar energy, which is responsible for emotions. So everybody in your audience, congratulations. You're on the road to perfection. You're going to be the next Nikola Tesla, because if you have a mind, everybody does, and a heart, then you have scalar energy capability. And this is what Tesla discovered, that scalar energy is not only able to power a motor, but it powers the mind and the heart.
We talk about being the light and and all of that. So how does your technology pick up on the light emittance of a human being?
Yes. When I work with the scalar energy instrument, I want to make this very clear. It's not me, it's the animating force. When I work with the scalar energy instrument, I access consciousness. I'm not working with the movement, alternating current of movement of electrons. This is much grander than that. This is the consciousness or the logos or the intelligence of the universe. Maybe some people will call that the breath of the Holy Spirit. I am working with a force field that's everywhere. You've heard the expression quantum field, force field, consciousness, chi, prana, life force, Om. All of those terms describe scalar energy, which is not a movement or an alternating current of electrons. Okay, Tesla later in his life was no longer, and not to disparage him, he was no longer interested in AC electricity. He discovered scalar energy. He called it radiant energy on some occasions. He realized it operated through the ether. And if you look at Tesla's inventions later in his life, they were wireless. He was capturing energy from the sun and the stars. It's fascinating. This is fascinating, people.
When you started working with the technology that you're currently using, I'm assuming did you build this yourself? And when did you start working, like putting this all together and constructing it?
So in theory, I worked as a teenager and in my 20s theorizing. And I was in college, I studied my brains out and I tried to learn as much as possible. Well, as God would have it, at the age of 33, I met the Hieronymus family. Galen Hieronymus was a prolific inventor. He started his career with electricity, but he discovered during his lifetime scalar energy. And I was able to I performed an understudy with his wife, Sarah Hieronymus. Now, today, the Hieronymus family is a footnote in history, but eventually people will realize that Hieronymus was the American equivalent of Tesla, that he was born and raised here in the States. Tesla was an immigrant, but Hieronymus had scalar energy instruments, and he tried to promote them back in the 80s and 90s. I was actually able to buy a scalar energy instrument from the Hieronymus family. And after they died, I took on, under my, if you will, more or less the unwritten rule or the oral tradition that was passed on from Hieronymus to me. I took on his work and I perfected his instruments. I give him all the credit in the world. I acknowledge that on my website, but somebody had to take on this oral tradition. I call it an oral tradition because very little is written down. It's theory. And so you really have to find the notes of Tesla or Hieronymus, and you have to study those private notes. It's really not well promulgated. Why? Because it's suppressed. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, in 1993, I met the Hieronymus family. I performed a 5-year understudy with the wife of the inventor, Sarah Hieronymus, a brilliant woman. And she opened up the laboratory to me, and she revealed what her husband had achieved. Her husband was able to take a photograph of the Apollo 11 astronauts. And while the astronauts were orbiting the moon, Galen Hieronymus could detect their heartbeat on a photograph. When I work with people, likewise, I work with their photographs. Imagine Galen Hieronymus would have photographs of the Apollo 11 astronauts and can pick up their biorhythms, their heartbeat, their organ function, their blood pressure on a photograph while the astronauts were orbiting the moon.
I love that on your website, you refer to a photograph as the bilocated version of another. Yes.
Thank you. Let me accentuate. My photograph is my bilocated version. Now, obviously, this is me. And when we photograph a person, we capture them on film or on printed paper. Well, it's even much more profound than that. When you photograph a person in the scalar field, you capture their soul, mind, and body. So nobody ever visits my laboratory. I don't treat people ever physically. I only treat photographs, which, as you pointed out adroitly, it's their bilocated version. My body, soul, my constitution is found on a photograph. Your constitution, Nicole, would be found on any photograph. So when I work with people, I access the time-space continuum. Scalar energy can find a person, their aura, their force field, and produce favorable outcomes on the photograph. It's not biological, it's informational.
It's so interesting. And as you're talking about that, have you, because it's almost like what's coming to mind now is even like teleportation in a way.
Yes, it is.
Can you go into that?
Yes. Yes. Now, how is teleportation possible? That in an instant, you could travel from A to B. It's only possible in the scalar energy force field. So when somebody sends me their photograph, very good, that's very astute, I'm impressed. They teleport to my laboratory through the quantum field. In other words, you can be in two places at once. And since we're working with energy, this is non-physical. We're not moving physical mass from point A to point B. We're connecting consciousness.
Mm.
So if Newtonian physics is always dead set upon some type of physical mass, and that the speed of light cannot exceed 186,000 miles per second, those are the rules, those are the laws, if you will, of Newtonian physics. In scalar physics, there's no mass. And hence we can be everywhere instantaneously. So we're not traveling from point A to point B. Point A and point B pre-exist and they connect. There is no point A and point B. In a scalar energy realm, it's consciousness. Consciousness is everywhere. You can't say consciousness is here and there. It's simply the blanket of the universe.
Okay, yeah.
So when I place a person's photograph inside an instrument, they're immediately immersed in the field of consciousness. And we immediately transcend time and space, and people immediately teleport to my laboratory.
Mm-hmm. This is so cool. I love this. And maybe you might be a really good person to get your take on this, because I had a physical experience of what felt like nanoseconds of bilocation into quantum teleportation. So in one moment I was, and this was maybe a year, almost 2 years ago. This was, I think, in 2021, March of 2021. I was in my car driving along Highway 6 towards Denver. And I remember very specific details of being in the passing lane. And this was in the evening. And the next thing I know, the road was splitting and I was in the mountains going westbound on Highway 70.
Goodness.
Yeah.
You entered into a vortex.
So my question is, well,
Wow.
Let's just start with this. Does a bilocation occur immediately before teleportation? Because I'm wondering if like you almost are in two places at the same time and then you transfer fully.
I'm going to make this so simple. When you are traveling on Highway 6, you are in the electromagnetic spectrum.
Okay.
For some reason, you jumped out of the electromagnetic spectrum and you went into the scalar spectrum. And once you're in the scalar spectrum, you're everywhere instantaneously. So you teleported in the scalar dimension to another highway heading west. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That happened to you.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And I mean, when
I had to turn around, when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm in the mountains. I had to turn around and it was probably another 10 minutes driving, 10 or 15 minutes driving out of the way, like from where I was. Yeah.
Okay. The highway that you were teleported to, had you traveled that highway before?
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's usually the way it is. Thank God you didn't wind up on the top of the Himalayan mountains.
No.
Your Akashic record or your memory or your scalar energy memory puts you back on the highway. Be mindful of this. Mm-hmm. You went back to another highway. Thank God you did not go back to the River Nile or to the top of the Himalayas, because you had never experienced the River Nile, or your car did not have the memory of another highway.
Yes.
You could have been teleported to Interstate 95 in New York.
Yeah.
Or on the East Coast. You were not. So this is what I find many times. If people experience deja vu, it's relevant to their life. Or teleportation, it's relevant to their life. I'm going to give you, for instance, you've heard of the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm-hmm.
There was a ship, the Eldridge. It was a naval ship. And this was a scalar energy experiment that went bad.
Yes.
And the ship was docked in Philadelphia. And during this scalar energy experiment, the ship was, if you will, subjected to very strong scalar energy, and it teleported instantaneously to Virginia, apparently to Roanoke, Virginia, to another naval shipyard. So in other words, the ship had a memory. It was in Philadelphia, but for some reason, it went back to a previous event in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So the teleportation was from one shipyard to another. Okay, it wasn't from the shipyard to the Himalayan mountains, mm-hmm. because the ship did not have a memory of the Himalayan mountains.
So if you're actually using a material beyond your own body.
Yes.
It is, because I would assume your body has memories of other past lives and other places that you could, if it was just your body, go to other places, even if you haven't visited it in this particular lifetime.
Yes.
But an actual, say like a car or a ship, no matter, it'll only be able to go where it has previously been before.
I think so. This is what I found.
Okay.
When people say that they've experienced bilocation, it's usually to some other event or some other location that's relative to them.
Okay.
You know, for instance, you did not teleport to India. You were never born in India. Your car was never born in India. India is a wonderful place, but it's not relative to your past experience. So this, you know, this is very interesting. And by the way, when the sailors were teleported during the Philadelphia experiment,
yeah,
you recognize that one of the events that took place is that the soldiers were embedded, excuse me, the sailors were embedded in the hull of the ship. I'm going to repeat that. After the experiments, this is why the experiment failed. The ship and the sailors became non-physical. And for a while, some of the sailors, apparently they said they could walk through the wall of the ship. They were non-physical. They were ghost-like. They were spirit-like. After the experiment, and again, the experiment failed, the sailors were trying to walk through the hull of the ship, and they became, if you will, interpenetrated, and they locked in place. So the result of the Philadelphia experiment, yes, there was teleportation. And during that event of teleportation, the ship and the sailors were non-physical, because when you're in the scalar energy realm, a strong scalar energy realm, you're non-physical. And as a spirit-like entity, you can teleport instantaneously anywhere in the world. So the ship and the sailors teleported instantaneously, but they were non-physical during that event. After the scalar energy event ended, the sailors returned to their physical constitution, as did the ship. But sadly, some of the sailors, they had their hands stuck in the hull of the ship, or they were walking through the hull of the ship, meaning what? After that event was no longer a scalar event and it returned to electromagnetic energy, the ship and the sailors were interpenetrated. They were fused together.
Okay, so how did they see that then? How did that look?
Well, apparently some of the eyewitnesses said it was ghastly, that they saw the ship, it had returned to Philadelphia, and that some of the sailors were interpenetrated into the steel body of the ship. And this is why the Navy and the United States government has hushed this up. Was that a true experiment? I believe so, because it has the earmarks of Tesla's work. For instance, many times when Tesla would have a high-powered scalar energy instrument, it would develop a green corona around the object that was under the influence of scalar energy. Tesla was working in Colorado Springs with a very high-powered scalar energy instruments. And apparently the moths in the vicinity of his tower in Colorado Springs had this green corona, this halo of green around it. Well, prior to the ship teleporting in Philadelphia, it developed this green halo, this green corona. All of those are signs that it was a scalar energy experiment. All of that is a sign that indeed did happen, that ship teleported from Philadelphia to Virginia.
Oh my God. It's like taking the words out. Like it's kind of what I'm processing right now. All of this.
This is a new physics book. We're not working with the movement of electrons.
No.
This is consciousness. This is a different physics. This is a different, it's a new and emerging science.
It's interesting because I've heard of the Philadelphia experiment before, a couple of times, but I'd never heard the part where the sailors actually interpenetrated with the material of the boat.
You'll see that. I'll give you another, for instance. In nature, that happens sometimes with tornadoes. Now, consider a tornado. It's a vortex of energy. Tornadoes spin. What causes the spin? Scalar energy. So a tornado is spinning scalar energy. And some tornadoes
Oh
are
my gosh,
so strong.
wait. Is this how they came up with the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy?
Yes.
Like,
Well, that could be one of the
because I
reasons.
mean that's the first thing I'm
It's a
thinking about.
teleportation. You're right. Dorothy teleported
Yes.
in the tornado. Very good.
Okay. All right.
Very good. So sometimes a very strong tornado will pass an area, and in so doing, when it's passing a particular point, a location, the objects become non-physical. And two pieces of wood could become non-physical, fly into one another, and after the tornado passes, the two pieces of wood are locked into place.
Really?
So prior to the tornado, two pieces of wood are in the electromagnetic state. During the tornado, it's such a strong scalar energy force field. Again, a tornado is a vortex.
Mm-hmm.
During the scalar energy event of a tornado, the two pieces of wood become non-physical. I'm just opening my hands to say I'm relaxing the molecular bonds. And those two pieces of wood can fly into one another and interpenetrate. They could pass through one another. Sometimes those two pieces of wood are locked into place after the tornado passes because it's no longer a scalar energy force field. The two pieces of wood return to their physical state. They were non-physical during the tornado, and they locked into place after the tornado. They're fused together. And there's photographs of pieces of wood or 2x4s that have interpenetrated into the side of a home. It's fascinating. I'll show you those photographs.
Oh yeah, do. Will send them to me afterwards too, because what I'll do is I'll post them to my audience for them to see as well.
Okay.
That's so interesting. So what you're saying is what happens in the scalar energy field is that the molecular bonds relax, is what you said. So
yes,
that allows them to be, I guess, penetrated.
Yes.
Okay. And then when you come into the electromagnetic field, the molecular bonds return to a stiff or kind of molded state.
Exactly. Now we can explain why two objects interpenetrate during tornadoes. This happens quite frequently. People just can't understand it. I've seen glass interpenetrated by blades of grass.
So this is why in the Matrix they show the bullets going like, well, he dodges some of them, but they've even said like the bullet can go right through someone when they're in I guess a scalar field.
Yes.
And it can leave, and then they can go back to the electromagnetic field.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
For instance, your audience, I'll speak to your audience in general. Some people believe in angels, and those who believe in angels believe an angel can pass through a wall, that an angel can walk through a door, a physical door, a physical wall. Why? The angel is non-physical. The angel is spirit. A physical wall does not present any impediment to a non-physical being. This is why angels can pass through walls.
Okay. Okay. So this is so wild. So, okay. Now my next question is then, because you mentioned how from what your experiences or what you've seen is that typically an object or a person will only go back to a place of memory or where they've been before. Have you experienced this either with yourself or anyone you know who's gone through similar teleportation?
We call that deja vu. Some people call that dream recall. Many times when people go under my program, they're bilocating to my laboratory by way of their photograph. Or I assume sometimes group photographs of people. Okay. And people start having dreams, and they go back in time to when they were a youngster or at a younger point in their lives. So in the quantum field, in the scalar energy force field, we're balancing the brain waves through the chakra balancing, chakra reprogramming. And in so doing, people go back in time and they remember a past event, or they have a deep dream recall of some type of event or some type of circumstance earlier in their life. Now, how does that happen? Because we reprogram the mind. We're in the quantum field. You transcend time and space, and a lot of people have significant dream recall after my scalar energy session.
So interesting. I literally did a plant medicine journey with psilocybin a week or two ago. And in that journey, I had like, it was interesting. I've never experienced this before, where I was entering at warp speed almost all the dreams I've had in over the last year. And it just felt like I was continuing them from that point or re-experiencing them. Okay, so I have a question here for you. This is so interesting. A lot of my audience is aware of one of the things I had to do was I had to get the vaccine, which I'm not really into vaccines at all, but for my specific circumstances, I needed to get it. And so what I did was in the car, in the parking lot, before I actually went into the building, I went into deep meditation with some very high energy music. And I started creating, I guess, what you're saying, a field that I want to say kind of, I don't know if it mimicked the scalar field or not. I'm curious for your take on this. And I'll get into why I'm saying this in a second. I basically made an intention that whatever the vaccine that was going to be entering my field would either be neutralized and eliminated, or it would find a higher frequency to stay in my field and work with my body, not against. Later on, I had a friend who reads fields and was helping a lot of people clear the virus from their field. She said that she had never seen it before. There was only one spike protein in my body, and it was a much higher level of consciousness than she had seen before. A few weeks later, I come across Joe Dispenza, who is then releasing very new information, like a new study where they've noticed that people, when they're in high meditative states, would not allow the coronavirus to attach into the cells, like the bonding could never occur. So I'm wondering if what he was witnessing was the work of the scalar field acting where the bonds are now not, like you said, they're very relaxed and they can't penetrate or stick. And then that just like, what happens once?
Yes to that.
Okay,
Yes,
what happens
yes to
there
that.
exactly from your perspective?
Well, let's put it in this context. When you pray or meditate, it's a scalar energy state.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a Christian background, and Jesus said to pray without ceasing. Why? It's scalar energy. It's consciousness. It's the instructions of the universe, and it has an import. It has an influence. So positive thinking, prayer, meditation, all of that is a scalar energy function. All of that is scalar energy in action. And keep in mind the direction, the intelligence precedes the result, cause and effect. So if thinking, praying, meditating, it is your you preempt an event. Yes, that's the instruction. The instruction is the cause. The outcome is the result. So whether you're Joe Dispenza or some other type of person who understands and appreciates the quantum field, why not first plan, have instructions, and then the instructions carry through and give you that guaranteed result? The analogy that I use frequently is if you're an architect, you have architectural plans before you build. You better know what you're doing. So you have plans, instructions, and then you build a home, a factory. Well, scalar energy are the instructions of the universe. And this is the way God wants it. We have instructions, non physical instructions, scalar instructions, and then you have a physical universe.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Hence why it's so important to be intentional about everything that you're doing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We make or break our lives. I've said that so many times. I mean every word of that. If you want to have a good day, you're going to have a good day. If you want to be negative, you want to have a rotten day, you'll probably have a negative day. It really is up to you. Divorce yourself from some external stimuli. You can't control the world. I try not to control the world. I had goals this morning, for instance. Research goals, business goals. I accomplished those goals. So I set myself up for success. I have directions. Every day I have goals, which are directions, which are instructions. And if you follow your goals / instructions, you're going to have a great day.
So what I'm hearing you saying from a different perspective is, because we always hear that the masculine energy creates the container for the feminine energy to do the work. And so the feminine energy would be considered, say, the scalar field. So to like, just using it as an example.
Okay.
And the masculine is the instructions, the direction, the focus, the clarity, you know. And so when you apply that, then, and I say this only because I think it's so underestimated, the power of the masculine energy when wanting to work with spirit, the quantum field, like all these things that are very etheric, which is loosely defined by the feminine energy, that anyone who's really wanting to, I would say, master their own human technology, when they understand the power of the two uniting, the masculine and the feminine forces, that you're able to reach levels that you've never like reached before, especially if you've been more predominantly feminine energy versus the masculine.
And if that suits you, and with this new and emerging science, if that's the way you define it, good. There is no textbook yet on consciousness or scalar energy.
Yeah.
So, you can't say, oh, well, I don't know about that. It's wide open.
Mm-hmm.
It's wide open. And sadly, academia is not teaching consciousness or scalar energy, which are the same, as they should. Yes. As they should. They're missing the boat. I'm going to give you a quote. I'll paraphrase Tesla. Tesla said, when academia embraces non-physical science, the scientific world will make greater progress in a decade than it has in centuries. So Tesla knew that the instructions, scalar energy, far exceed in importance the outcome. And I tell people, here's my analogy. If you want to instruct your car, you get in the driver's seat, you put your hands on the wheel, and you instruct your car. You're in command. You don't instruct your car from the rear bumper and push your car.
Yeah.
So, and again, with the universe, the instructions are the driver's seat, scalar energy. The effect, the outcome is the physical world. So why not get behind the driver's seat?
Well said. I really like that analogy. I think it helps people become a lot more practical in their use when we're talking about things that seem very intangible. Right? So let's get into the actual work that you've done on parasites, fungus, bacteria, viruses, all of that.
Well, since you have such an advanced audience, I'm going to make this very simple. During the Philadelphia experiment, if the ship became non-physical, if the Eldridge became non-physical, when I work with a scalar energy instrument on a muted version, it's not as strong, I perform the Philadelphia experiment upon a microbe. If during the Philadelphia experiment, if the ship can become non-physical, during my scalar energy research, I've developed a technique to make germs, microbes, non-physical for an instant. So in so doing, a microbe, a bacterium, let's say, loses its molecular rigidity. It loses its physical molecular bond. It falls apart. Now, it doesn't cease to exist. It just falls apart. We negate the molecular bonds of a microbe, a virus, a bacterium, as I mentioned. So the same principle that was used with a great deal of energy to make a ship non-physical and to lose its rigidity during the Philadelphia experiment, to a minor extent, I use my scalar energy instrument, and I tell my instrument, I want you to go look for the herpes virus. That's a photograph of the herpes virus. And I perform the Philadelphia experiment on a virus, and it shatters, it loses its physical rigidity. It falls apart. And that's why this works.
So you're actually using photographs of the viruses or the pathogens or...
Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I have to instruct my instrument.
Yes.
So isn't a photograph a great tool? Isn't this the perfect instruction? How do I define herpes? by a photograph. There's no human reasoning here. Now, in practice, I take a photograph of the herpes virus and I place it right next to my photograph in the instrument, okay? So the two force fields are interacting. So the herpes virus communicates with my force field. And if I have the herpes virus that's identified in my photograph, this process tells the herpes virus to fall apart, to become non-physical.
Without telling you to become non-physical.
Exactly, because it's not that much energy. Now, if I had the energy of the Philadelphia experiment, my goodness,
okay.
I could make a house become, well, if a ship can become non-physical and transport from Philadelphia to Roanoke, Virginia, then you could do that with anything, including people. Well, the sailors did teleport and they did become non-physical.
That's so interesting. So have you got hundreds of thousands of photographs there then of different viruses?
Yes. Now, if you read my website, I claim that I can work with 400,000 species of germs. Mm-hmm. So what am I saying? I have photographs of 400,000 species of bacteria, viruses, protozoan, fungi, even prions. So I can instruct my instrument to look for 400,000 species of microbes and perform the Philadelphia experiment on them and disassemble them.
So just so I'm clear, so you're putting this in your scalar technology, you're performing the Philadelphia experiment on the actual scalar photo. Yes. And then once that's done, do you then put it on top of yours? And like how exactly, I mean,
when I work with people, I work with people simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So today in my laboratory, I work with photographs of 500,000 people. So many times I receive group photographs. I've been doing this for years. So I'm working with non-government agencies all over the world. So today I had photographs of 500,000 people. And in order for me to eradicate the herpes virus, I simply take the photograph of the herpes virus and place it right next to the photograph of the people. And the two force fields, the two energy fields communicate. So in one day, I can ascertain, identify, and eradicate the herpes virus in the quantum field of 500,000 people.
Now, does it only take one session, or how does it work?
It only takes one session because
really?
everything is instantaneous. In other words, during the Philadelphia experiment, instantaneously the ship teleported from Philadelphia to Virginia because everything happens at a snap. All action in the scalar energy force field is instantaneous. There is no time lag. There is no extension of time. There's only the present moment.
Now, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that if someone were, say, to have, for instance, the herpes virus, and maybe it was part of a soul contract that was maybe obviously to start with it, but would there be some sort of emotional programming that creates or allows for that to recreate itself, or no? How does it work? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, with a microbe, this is what I've discovered. Mm-hmm. It cannot reassemble, or at least not according to my work. Once I break down the herpes virus, I negate the molecular bonds and it returns to proteins and elements. So I'm transmuting matter. I'm taking one physical form, a microbe, and I reduce it into proteins, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen.
Mm-hmm. And what about things like cancer? Because I know you've talked about leukemia on your website.
There are certain viruses that have been attributed to cancer, such as the human papillomavirus is considered to be the #1 cause of cervical cancer. Mm-hmm. Now, I can only judge my work by what people testify because, again, I'm working with their photograph. So if there's a correlation between the photograph and the person has to make that correlation. The person has to speak of a testimony. I can tell you what I'm doing in my laboratory, but can I promise the outcome with people? No. But to speak to that point, I've worked with many people, and women around the world have told me that at one time they had a viral load for human papillomavirus. And after my work, they no longer have a viral load. If they have a PCR test, a follow-up, they no longer have a viral load for the human papillomavirus. Now, by extension of that, does that mean we've eliminated the number one cause of cervical cancer? Well, I think we have. But again, I have to be very cautious because this is a new science.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to measure my work. There's no way to measure scalar energy. And for me to be able to prove the cause and effect relationship between my photograph and myself, I can't do that. At least I can't do that by Newtonian physics. So I only can speak anecdotally. You know, this is a correlation, but can I prove this? No, it's anecdotal.
Yes, yes. And you know, you've done a lot of work around the world. You're working with, like you said, many NGOs, working to help, I'm assuming, get them cleaner water sources, like in Uganda, and you work a lot with India. Before we get into that work, have you experienced any pushback, let's just call it, from any places?
No, not yet. And I think for two reasons. God protects me first and foremost. And secondly, what I'm doing is never been defined.
Mm-hmm.
You know, working with a photograph, with a scalar energy instrument, nobody can define that. You know, I don't work with people, so as far as I know, it's perfectly legal to work with a photograph.
And your anti-aging programs, what is this? What are you using with the scalar light? So, because I mean, I've done a bunch of different research into it, and I've looked at like telomeres and what's it called? Redox signaling molecules.
Here's my approach.
Mm-hmm.
I can't promise that I can work directly with the telomeres. I can't prove that, but I can prove this. I have a program called Natural Foods. I'm going to hold up a photograph of spinach. This is spinach under magnification.
Okay. Normal everyday spinach.
Yeah. If I place that spinach next to my photograph in the quantum field, then my quantum body will start to create spinach. See, everything I do is by way of a photograph because there's no human thinking, there's no human reasoning. So a photograph of spinach enters into my quantum field. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, then my constitution, at least my quantum body, starts to experience spinach at a cellular level, or perhaps we should say the quantum level. That's how I get my nutrition. And this is what has abetted my longevity. I have nutrition 24 hours a day through a program that I call Natural Foods. I can actually assemble natural foods.
Are you still eating?
It's very good. I've reduced my caloric intake probably by 40%. I usually miss at least one meal a day and I'm not hungry. Mm-hmm. And people tell me, as long as they stay on this program, they usually can miss a meal a day. Because you're getting your nutrients. And if you're receiving by quantum energy your nutrients, you're no longer quite as hungry. So you reduce your caloric intake. You're not hungry because your body says, we're satisfied. We've received the nutrients that we need.
Wow. This is all so very interesting. And I love where this conversation has gone. You know, you've provided scalar light technology wellness sessions to a lot of people across the world, especially those who are unable to provide it for themselves. Can you speak a little bit about what their experience has been, whether it's been in Uganda or in India? Like what are they experiencing?
We're very excited about a clinical study. It's loosely organized, but it's still a clinical study. There's a group in India. I'm going to hold up a photograph. Mm-hmm. This is the Om Prakash HIV/AIDS clinic in Delhi, India. Om Prakash has thousands of people are HIV positive. We've received from Om Prakash 5,000 photographs of people who were HIV positive. And after we work with these people through their photograph, through a collage usually, everybody feels better and nobody has a viral load. For instance, this man in the center with the orange shirt, he's the founder of Om Prakash. In 2017, he sent me his photograph and I worked with him. After I worked with his photograph, he no longer has any viral load. After 13 years of being HIV positive, he's undetectable. His CD4 count has gone up significantly. He's gained weight and he's never had a viral load since. We're going on 5 years now.
And how often is he getting sessions? Is it just that one time or every now and then?
Just that one time.
Just that one time. Wow.
Now, to follow that up, he said, well, this seems to be of merit. So he introduced this to 5,000 people at Om Prakash.
Okay.
And I've received photographs from this clinic in Delhi, India. And after I work with people, nobody has a viral load for HIV.
Nobody, like zero.
Nobody. Zero. Nobody has a positive, nobody is detectable with HIV.
Well,
now I placed that on my.
That's a pretty strong outcome.
That's a strong. Yeah, it is. It's beyond chance. Let's face it. It's you could say, well, one test result was false, negative, but after 5,000 people, that's way beyond probability. There's no chancing here. There's no gimmies here. 5,000 people cannot be wrong.
Well, this is so incredible. And I think this is a great time right now to let everyone in the audience know how they can get their own free Scalar Light session, with you.
Yeah. Our website is scalarlight.com. And I want to prove this to the world. So I'm trying to make this as simple, straightforward, and easy as possible. Visit the website, read about our work. You're entitled. Anybody in the world can sign up for 15 days of free session. Scalarlight.com. You simply email us your facial shot, just a bust shot. I don't need a full body shot. And then I want you to tell your family about this and have them upload their photographs. And by all means, send us photographs of your pets. You can send us as many as 6 or 7 photographs. We'll treat everybody in your family, including your pets, for free for 15 days. And then I leave it up to the people to prove this new science. Now, keep in mind, this is not Newtonian physics. This is not taught by academia. My work is groundbreaking. I don't know of anybody else who's doing this in the world. So to cut to the chase, I have to rely upon people. There is no scientific group that's going to say yes or no to this. Nobody has my instrumentation. Nobody's been able to duplicate my work. How do I prove this to the world? The people will.
And do you have a way of people donating money to you if it does work, or
we after 15-day sessions, we have a retail website. If people want to support us, fine. If not, if they don't think that it's of merit, no harm.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's, I mean, if anyone were to receive any sort of benefit from it, it's worthwhile, one, sharing to more people so you can get more studies and testimonials.
Yes, that's the key. It's grassroots. Thank you. And to speak to that point, I want to keep it grassroots, because if I keep it with the people, I honor the people, and they've honored my research, and there's no corruption. There's no deception. Why would I want to get involved with people who just want to make money off of this, or wanted to do this for reasons besides a humanitarian gesture? I don't want that. So we're going to keep this grassroots. We're going to keep it clean and honest, and we'll move forward.
Let me ask you this, because your intentions, and we talked about, that is when you're going to be using the instrument, the instruction is so important. Do you think that your intention in your own instruction, because it's so pure, has an impact on it.
Yes.
Whereas say it were to fall into someone else's hands and they're in, maybe it was just like they just cared about making money. Let's just leave it as that basic force where it's not going beyond anything outside of that. Would that have some sort of impact on the technology?
I think so. I think so. Because as an operator, I know the instrument picks up on me.
Okay.
When I'm in the vicinity of this instrument and I'm treating people, I always pray and I have positive thoughts, and I'm thinking about what I'm doing. If you have a negative thought, this instrument is going to pick up on it and will project that. So if you will, you open up a new universe here with scalar energy, and you become the thought, you become the actor. So yes, you're right. I want to guard this technology, and I don't want it to fall into the wrong hands.
No. Well, even this in itself opens up another topic of why it's so important when you are working with your own energy field and you've got a purpose behind it to keep your field so clear of negative, judgmental, fear-based thoughts when you're trying to create something or build something, shift something, anything like that.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And this is the road that we're taking now. And thank you for saying that. It's so important to realize that we are scalar energy receptors. We receive this intelligence from God. It's a divine light. And it really should serve to inculcate the way you think, the way you feel will dictate not only your life and your decisions, but the life of, and if you will, the circumstances around you, including your family and friends.
So the scalar technology, this is circling us all the way back to the beginning of the show, is in essence showing us what we're already capable of doing ourselves.
Yes, that's part of my goal. You don't need an instrument. If I can achieve this with an instrument, everybody has a mind and a heart. And I want people to realize that and to utilize. We have incredible potential as people. We're only using a fraction of our potential.
This keeps crossing my mind too, especially after some of the healing that I've done or the way I've worked with energy to shift, as you say, the molecular bonding of things to not affect my own health. And what I think was the most incredible takeaway from all of this was not so much the healing in itself, but the potential that lies behind it and what we're actually capable of doing when we truly set our mind and our focus and the direction and all of those important instructions that you talk about to applying it to the scalar field.
Our conversation serves to instill that everybody has this potential. That consciousness, call it human thought, call it feelings, call it intuition, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has this gift. We're made in the image of God. So if we're made in the image of God, we're made with his divine light, which is scalar energy, scalar light. That really is the primary focus of my work. Yeah, breaking apart a bacterium, that's important, but that's not the center point. The center point is to change our lives. That scalar energy, once we realize it, will change our thinking, will change our emotions. And once we put this energy into action with inventions, we'll invent anti-gravity instruments. We'll power our homes with scalar energy. We'll use scalar energy to learn. Just as Tesla was using scalar energy as flashes of light, we will learn, we'll finally achieve our genius potential by opening up our scalar mind.
Okay, I just had a total download come in, or an aha moment, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I recently taught a course on which I called the Womb of Activation, and it was about how to unlock all the mysteries of the universe. And I was shown a specific technique in one of my mushroom journeys that I did last year, where I was shown how to weave through different dimensions the reality that you want to create, how to pull things that maybe aren't near you or you need to create, how to weave it all into this particular one. And as you're saying this, I'm just like, okay, so the photograph is so important, as equally as important when you're using your human technology as the vision of your mind. So whatever vision you're holding in your third eye is essentially the photograph that you're working with, scalar technology wise. So when we're going into, say, prayer or meditation and accessing the scalar field, we're using what's in our mind to be imprinted and created and molded into this reality.
Yes. Bravo. So you should be teaching courses in scalar energy. We need obviously a common language. We're trying to achieve that, but we don't have quite that common, that dictionary has not yet evolved. But nonetheless, it's all around us. And people like Joe Dispenza and you are teaching this. The quantum field is very real. It has to be. Years ago, I received a message from the Blessed Virgin Mary. She said, scalar light is necessary because the universe has to communicate with itself instantaneously. Without instantaneous communication, you'd have chaos. So in order to have an ordered universe, you have to have intelligence that communicates instantaneously. Everything must be held in proper balance in this universe instantaneously. Otherwise, the universe will become chaotic. That's how important scalar energy is. It governs the stars, the galaxies. It governs the sea. It governs our moods. It gives life to the elements. It forms the periodic table. It's the instructions of everything. I don't know of any physical or any property in science that's more important than scalar light. It's the cause of everything.
Wow. I'm now understanding the importance of vision. How and even as I say that, when we think about in our past histories, the seers who are able to see things. And also, I want to say to everyone also, this also speaks to why you don't want to look at things that you don't want to actually manifest. So, whatever it may be, I would say spending a lot of time visually stimulating your mind with things that you don't want to see, because as you're saying, like the photo, it uses that signature of the photograph, the constitution of that being or that thing, whatever it might be. It's all consciousness. And that is what is utilized through the scalar field.
Brilliant. And that's why you don't want to watch television programs that are violent or pornographic, because this is what you're taking in. This is what you're accepting.
So let me
ask ultimately, you become it's an extension. You become what you've been fed, what you believe in.
Let me ask you this, because this might seem really out there, but it dropped into my mind, so I just want to ask it. Have you ever had people who are in relation, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or anything like that, who wanted to maybe repair the marriage, whether there's a certain emotion that's present that wants to be, I don't know, have you ever dealt with anything like that?
You mean with my scalar energy practice?
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes husbands and wives will send me their photograph and they'll ask for an emotional healing, or they'll ask, many times scalar energy will give greater clarity or closure to an event. A lot of people have said the chakra balancing has allowed them to address trauma, that they can not necessarily agree with trauma, but accept it and move on. Many people have said that the chakra balancing has lifted their depression, or they're no longer desirous of, say, cigarettes or alcohol. And if that's the case, then it corrects the conscious. It corrects the mind. Our conscious is corrected with this energy. And that could extend to a relationship with boyfriend, girlfriend, or man and woman.
That's very interesting. And so what I hear you saying from that, so if someone, say, had an addiction to cigarettes and they wanted to quit, would you then put a picture of a cigarette?
Yeah. I have an addiction program in which I take photographs of nicotine or cigarettes under magnification, and I do treat people for addiction.
Oh, cool.
Nicotine and cigarettes and other what I would call illegal drugs, heroin, etc.
How cool. Now I know that one was directed for a couple of you out there who I know have been trying to quit and you just can't seem to do it. There's a couple in my audience who I know, a couple of people who've been trying. So, well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Tom. I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show and share all of your wisdom and your experience, your knowledge with my audience. Please let them know right now if there's any specific programs you've got going on, and also where they can find you. Of course, I'm going to leave all the links in the show notes for everyone.
I'm going to say, let's keep it simple. Visit the website scalarlight.com, and you can upload as many as 6 or 7 photographs of family members. Get their permission. And on a daily basis, we're going to balance your chakras. We're going to identify, clear, remove microbes, germs. In the third program, we can assemble nutrients, over 350 nutrients. Now, when you're under that program for 15 days, you're treated every day for chakras, pathogenic cleanse, and the nutrients. After 15 days, you should feel a shift. Most people say, I feel better. They can't necessarily put their finger on it because obviously it's non-physical. And you're not going to a masseuse, or you're not going to the gym, but you feel better. And then we let people decide if this is of merit and if this indeed has helped their constitution, their spiritual, mental, physical constitution. That's the best way for me to prove to the people that there's some merit here. Again, this is new, groundbreaking research. I don't know of anybody in the world that is doing this. So I don't have any peers. So I can't provide any peer-reviewed results.
Yes. Okay. Understood. And if someone then experiences an increase in their own wellness from these 15 days, can they then book a session with you for something specific that they'd like worked on?
Yeah, very good. So if you visit our website, we have 9 different programs. We have endorphins and neurotransmitters, the addiction program that I mentioned, amino acids, female hormones, male hormones, minerals and precious stones. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds here. So visit the website.
Okay.
And, you'll see my 50 years of work and my predecessor, his 50, Hieronymus, his 50 years of work on that website.
And do the pictures need to be as recent as possible, or?
No, very good question. The age of the photograph does not matter.
Okay.
Because you're outside of time with scalar energy. So whether it's a photograph when you're 5 years old or a photograph today, your energy field stays the same. So the age of the photograph does not matter. It's like your fingerprint.
Okay.
Whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old, you still have that same fingerprint.
Got you. So you're tuning into the original blueprint constitution is what you're saying. Okay.
Very good. Bravo. You're an expert. Bravo. I'm impressed.
Well, I thank you so much. I know we're going to discuss this a little bit further once we get off the air here, but guys, I highly suggest you go over to scalarlight.com and submit your photos via email or, however the way that you guys are receiving them, and try this out. What have you got to lose? And I think it's important to note how much you'd be helping the research and the studies of this technology to get more acknowledgement and seen by many more so that we can help others. So by simply passing on the information to others that you know about, speaking about this is how we help one another and how we start to make big change. So guys, I love you and I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I know you most likely did. And if you found it helpful or you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below in YouTube or on Spotify in the Q&A section. I'd love to hear from you. And please leave a review of this particular episode or the podcast if you found it helpful. All of that helps support my work and helps others find this show. I love you guys, and I'll be back with you next week. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.